I have to ask you a critical question here. I believe it, but is this working? Because I'm sure some people would say, oh, I mean, people are people, and they're going to be people forever. But obviously, because of what you all do on an everyday basis, is this working?
I want to say anecdotally, yes. Paul mentioned we actually ran our first survey September of last year. We're planning on doing a follow-up in October to measure whether we've made any improvements. There actually is, I guess, I'll speak from an employer perspective, a risk that goes with this kind of activity, because the minute you conduct a survey, you elevate the visibility of what it is you're surveying. And we have really put a big push organizationally behind the idea of respect. So we're really highlighting it, and I think sensitizing people to its presence, and unfortunately when it's absent to its absence. So there's a little push-pull going on.
Having been involved with the survey part of this process for almost a decade with different partners, and now we do this part of the business ourselves, we've seen significant improvements in there's multiple ways, multiple questions you can use to measure what we call employee engagement. And in some cases, we've seen up to 25% point improvement in the percent favorable rankings simply by focusing a little bit on the behaviors. We assume, we talked about kids versus adults. We assume that adults know how to act respectful.
Of course.
Well, I don't know about your household, but I was the oldest of 5 kids, and I'd be the first to say, we weren't always respectful. And if you don't have a very solid foundation of that growing up, how are you supposed to bring it into the workplace with you later? So while it may seem very basic to some people, I can say from experience that because we don't take what I would consider a warm, fuzzy approach to this subject. We don't say, let's just be nice to each other. We actually take kind of a scientific approach and talk about how the brain actually is physically able to do its best work based on how we're treated by other people. And when you put it in those terms, it's not so much a nice thing to do anymore. It's really, wow, from a business perspective, we really need to do this. We really need to be paying attention to this. You can't really have that conversation with a 3rd or 4th grader. But with an adult, you can say, yeah, I guess I can understand that. And then, more importantly, give them the tools that they can use to actually help improve their own interactions with other people.
Okay.
I think a big part of the process, too, is create this code of cooperation exercise.
Right. I was actually thinking as you're describing some of the process, there's been a couple of key pieces to this. We mentioned virtually every member of our management staff went through a half-day training session. Okay. There were a couple of points that I wanted to pick up on. First, it was kind of interesting because, honestly, I was a little nervous at the outset. I'm in human resources. I'm probably by nature comfortable with what some people would call that touchy-feely kind of interaction. And I was a little unsure about what to expect. Now, in selecting Edge Learning, there were a number of things that really attracted us, but one of the things that really stood out was Paul's ability as one of the deliverers to actually take this from that pure, how we change our behavior and how we play nice together to putting it into more concrete terms that, as he's suggesting, that adults can identify with. And I guess as a follow-on, what we didn't mention is the next step for us was, actually it was a 2-pronged approach. We first of all just kind of introduced into our open training curriculum the same training program and have made it available to all employees. We are going to, by the end of the year, I think, get between 500 and 600 of our employees through this program. So that's over and above the 250 plus managers that attended these sessions. As part of that, though, what we've also encouraged at, say, a department level is for the departments to get together, talk a little bit about their interpretations of the survey, their reactions to it, but maybe more importantly, talk about respect in terms of their everyday work lives and how they can operationalize and, if you will, put to stone the kind of the rules that they want to live by as they interact with each other. Paul alluded to a code of cooperation, and quite literally, we actually did this in human resources, pulled everybody together, and went through a series of exercises that resulted in creating a code of cooperation, and it was unique to us because it really addressed certain things that had to do with the way we specifically in human resources interacted with each other. And that code of cooperation it's something that we, from a human resource perspective, we've talked about kind of showcasing at each of our divisional meetings, which we have 2 or 3 times a year, just to keep it out in front of people, remind people about what we've agreed to. And I think from kind of circling back to the whole idea of workplace violence of any sort, again, what we're really hoping is this gets in front of it, and by establishing kind of that structure that helps us regulate ourselves, we avoid that workplace violence and those kinds of conditions.
You know, there's this old saying that people support what they help create. If I come into work and my employer hands me this workbook, my employee handbook, and says, thou shalt and thou shalt not, while I'm here in this office, I can look at it and I can say, I agree with that one, when no one's looking, I don't really care about that. On the other hand, if I have a voice in creating what that code is, I'm much more likely to support it going forward. And so to Tom's point, he said each group, that each department, part of the follow-up was for the manager of that department with their intact staff to create this local document, this code of cooperation, which gives each of the people in that, each of the associates in that group, a voice in saying, here's what respect should look like to us. And it may look a little bit different than the group up on the 8th floor or whatever it is, but it's okay. As long as I have a voice in it, I'm much more likely to support it on a consistent basis when I come to work.
Wow.
We've actually agreed that it can change over time, and it probably will. I'll give you an example. You can go 2 extremes, I suppose, but one of the items that's included in our Code of Cooperation, I love it because it's really appropriate. We have people at a lot of different facilities. We conduct remote meetings, people call in, that kind of thing. Inevitably, we forget to send advanced materials. So we always have somebody sitting out there and we're going through a presentation and it's, oh, geez, I forgot to send it to... One of the items on our Code of Cooperation is do not, if we are having remote meetings, do not forget to send advance. It sounds goofy, I know, but
it's there.
It's there. It was actually quite important to people. I was, do we really want to put this in there? And the consensus was yes. We do really want to put it into our Code of Cooperation because it's important to us.
You know, lots of things. You talked about violence at the very beginning, and we can include in the Code of Cooperation very specific positive behavior. It's the first level of a Code of Cooperation may include some things we agree not to gossip, for example, about each other. Okay. In a more evolved version of that, we may replace all those negative phrases with what we do expect instead. So instead of
the negative and turn it into a positive. Exactly.
We always speak positively of our peers, for example. And when you get a group committed to a document that they're typically not very long, it may only have 10 or 12 items on it, but it creates literally a cultural roadmap for that little group, and it can be very, very powerful in shaping behavior.
You really don't want more than 10 or 12 items.
No. Otherwise it becomes a manifesto.
Yes.